Welcome. Everybody is here today to join us for the Approved Provider List Service Specific webinar for residential and nursing care. We'll just literally give it another couple of seconds as people join, and then we'll get straight on to the main agenda. Okay, I think we've probably got most of participants here now already. So just welcome again, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name's Gillian Askew. I'm from Go for Growth, and I'm acting as your host for today. We will just to go through some housekeeping before we do introductions to the team. So the session is being recorded today. We will put a copy of the recording out on the Go for Growth LinkedIn page. That will also be tagged to North Yorkshire County Council, and we will also email both the slide deck and a copy of the session recording today to all registrations for today's session. If you couldn't register and you do want a copy, please do feel free to let your colleagues know that they can always email for a copy also. We do have chat and Q&A functions as is usual on Zoom, so please feel free to introduce yourself via the chat functionality. The chat functionality, you have a couple of options. You can chat to everybody or you can chat to hosts and panelists. So when you're using the chat, just make sure that you've picked the chat functionality that you are wanting to address the right audience. Please do feel free also to put questions to the team throughout the session today. If you could use the Q&A functionality for that, we will try and take questions dynamically as we go if it's relevant to the slides that the team are presenting. But we have also left Q&A for the end. As I said a moment ago, if for any reason, because we are covering quite a lot in these sessions, if we don't get to any questions in the time that we've got allotted today, and we will finish the time at 11:30, we will come back with answers to those questions in slower time. Please do also feel free to ask questions anonymously. You can do that using the Q&A functionality. That's not a problem. And so if I can just ask the team to introduce themselves, if I can start with you, Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Armstrong. I'm the Strategic Service Development Manager for Hambleton and Richmondshire locality, and I cover the residential and nursing work stream along with the dementia portfolio. And as a team, we are looking to transform and improve services across the county.
Thank you, Carol. Hannah?
Hi, so I also work in the service development team alongside Carol. I have a locality footprint of the Craven locality of North Yorkshire, and then from a portfolio perspective, I have the care market, sort of the overarching care market portfolio, including sustainability, and as part of that, heavily involved in the re-procurement of the current approved provider lists. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And Julie?
Julie Toman, Quality and Governance Officer for North Yorkshire County Council. Most of you probably on the call will recognise me from Care Connected, but I am here today to talk about the quality pathway that is part of the new APL and PAM system, which I'll explain a little bit later, and how that works, and it's a new quality assurance approach. Thanks, Gillian.
Thanks, Julie. And as I said, my name's Gillian Askew. I'm representing a company called Go for Growth today that's working in partnership with North Yorkshire County Council for all of the approved provider list procurements, the 4 service-specific APLs. We're providing process support. So on behalf of North Yorkshire County Council, helping providers to navigate the application form, registration to your tender, expressing interest, all of that process environment. That's what we're here to help with. And so I'll push on with the agenda. So Hannah, I think this is over to you to start with.
Yeah, so I'll cover some of the introductory slides. So just to let you know what we're looking to cover today, I can see some familiar faces from yesterday's home-based support session, so apologies for any duplication in these introductions, but we will be covering what the overarching changes and or principles are of the new approved provider lists, and then we'll look more specifically at the key changes if you're a current provider or principles principles if you're a new provider of that new residential and nursing care service specification, what services will be covered through that specification, and some of the key high-level contract terms that will feature for this service. Julie will then come on, as she did yesterday, to talk about a brief introduction to the new quality pathway that will be introduced as part of this reprocurement and the PAMS system as well. And then Jill will finish us off by talking about the other support available. So this webinar is part of a programme of support that we're working with Go for Growth to deliver to provide as much support to the market as possible in the lead up and during this procurement. And then we'll finish with a Q&A. So on to the next slide, please, Jill. Okay, so this is just a brief introduction to kind of set the scene as to why we're here. North Yorkshire County Council are currently reprocuring the approved provider list for adult social care. So hopefully if you're a current provider with us today, you'll know that the current approved provider lists for adult social care, of which there are 3, come to an end at the end of October this year. And we're provisionally looking to publish the opportunity to join the new approved provider list at the beginning of June, so in the next couple of weeks. So just as a recap, if there is anyone new here, an approved provider list is a pre-approved list of providers covering a defined set of services, and that approval does not guarantee work at that stage. To join the new approved provider list and be considered for new packages of care from the 1st of November, providers will need to submit an application to those new provider lists and demonstrate minimum standards, including a quality assessment and submission of a price. There's just some notes there at the bottom about if you wish to apply to our current approved provider list, which will still run until the end of October. You'll do that using the current format, and there's just some links there that will come out on these slides just for the avoidance of doubt and any confusion. Just pop me onto the next slide then, Jill, that's perfect, thank you. Okay, so just to cover, as I say, some overarching changes if you're a new provider, or principles, changes if you're a current provider, and principles if you're a new provider of the new provider lists that are coming in from the 1st of November this year. So as I said previously, we've got 3 lists at the moment. From the 1st of November, there will be 4 lists, and we've slightly redefined the scope and definitions within those lists, hence the purpose of these service-specific webinars. So those 4 lists from the 1st of November will be residential and nursing, which we're going to do a bit of a focus on at today's session. There's a community-based support service specification, which covers all support that's delivered out and about in the community away from a person's home. So that support, that list includes one-to-one support out in the community, as well as our day service and daycare type provision. The 3rd list is home-based support, so that includes all of the support that's delivered in a person's home, both regulated and non-regulated. And we did have a focus session, just like the one today, about home-based support yesterday. The recording will be made available shortly if anybody does want to watch that back. And then there'll be a 4th list covering supported living services specifically, which is a new list. So all of the service descriptions have been reviewed and rewritten in some cases. You'll see some key themes throughout those service descriptions. So we've got a much more enablement and re-ablement type approach within those services. So the expectation that we'll not only maintain and keep people safe, but we'll develop independence and promote and maintain independence wherever possible as well. We've tried to embed an ambition around technology-enabled care within those service specifications, and working together with you as providers to innovate and consider digital solutions as much as possible for people. And we've also included within those service specifications the discharge to assess processes and timescales that we all know have evolved throughout COVID. As well as the new service descriptions, we've also introduced a new standards and outcomes framework, which applies across all of the approved provider lists and the service descriptions. It's based on the East of England regional standards and outcomes framework, and has links throughout it to both the NICE guidance and also the TLAP making it real I and we statements in relation to individuals' outcomes and what we'd like to see delivered across all of the service specifications. In terms of the actual application process, and as Jill referred to at the beginning, there are specific webinars and drop-in sessions in relation to the application process itself, but we have slightly changed the quality and pricing evaluation at the point of application, and more details will follow on that. We're looking to run a specific drop-in session that will look specifically at the application form once the procurement goes live. There's been some changes in terms of costing models and payment terms. So some standard things that we've introduced across all of the specifications are hours per week contracts, standardised notice periods, standardised definitions of what we understand as planned and unplanned absences, and the terms under which we will pay and charge people for those absences. And then we've also included some guidance so that we're all consistently recording our actual delivery and consistently rounding where appropriate, because we have some discrepancies around that. And then Julie's here to talk us through the introduction of PAMS and the quality pathway, which is a big feature of this re-procurement. Just on to the next slide, I think, Jill.
I think there might be just one question that might be good to take, if that's okay, Hannah.
Sure.
So we've had a question that says, does this approved provider list include providers out of district residential services where places are spot purchased by North Yorkshire County Council?
Yes, so if you are an out-of-county provider with a residential service, perhaps just over the border, we've got lots of borders in North Yorkshire, then if you wish to continue to accept placements from North Yorkshire County Council from the 1st of November, you should join the list in the same way as in-county providers.
Perfect, thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, and I'm not going to go through this slide in a great level of detail, but it was just to give you a snapshot of the standards and outcomes framework, just so people have got an idea of the types of things that we'll be covering in there. Hopefully nothing is a surprise within there. You'll see some standard outcome domains down the left-hand side, so 6 outcomes, high-level outcomes in terms of involvement information, personalised care and support, safeguarding, suitability of services, suitability of service provider personnel and quality, and then you've got the 16 standards that map against those. What the full document does is it also makes direct links to NICE guidance where appropriate, and also breaks down each of those standards into more manageable areas that you can self-assess yourself against during the lifetime of your service. So it's just to give people a snapshot of that. I think that's it for my slides. I think I'm handing over to Carol, unless there's any specific questions related to those slides, or we can wait until the end. You're on mute, Jill.
There is one question around the timescale for the release of the average locality rate figures.
So I don't think I've touched on locality average rate figures. I'm not sure if this person was at yesterday's webinar and is asking a question in relation to that, but the average locality rate figures for the home-based support services, if that's what the question refers to, but will be released at the point of the procurement going live.
Okay.
Apologies if I'm answering the wrong question there. So if that person wants to resubmit a question because I haven't answered it correctly, then by all means do so.
Thank you, Hannah. Carol, over to you, I think.
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me and see me now. Apologies for the hitch at the beginning. So just looking at the key principles and changes to the delivery model, it's vital that we've got a care home market that provides flexible and responsive accommodation with a wraparound package of care, a range of choice of quality assured residential and nursing support to both older people and working age adults with disabilities in the county. And we would therefore like service providers to work together to ensure services focus on maximising independence rather than fostering dependency and reliance. So supporting people to stay well, to prevent unnecessary hospital admission, and where necessary, facilitate timely discharge from hospital. So to this aim, we're looking to commission services that provide accommodation, care, support and stimulation that meet both people's long-term care needs, whilst also providing sufficient support and care to meet their short-term needs. And as you can see from the slide, we've defined that provision as short-term and long-term provision. So the short-term provision offers planned and/or emergency respite to support an individual or give carers a break, support discharges from hospital through short-term provision of up to 4 weeks, and step-up, step-down provision to either prevent hospital admission or encourage reablement following discharge. Longer term provision, we're looking for residential nursing or dual registered homes, as well as accommodation with care, support and education in the form of specialist colleges for young adults who have special educational needs and disabilities. And all that accommodation should have a focus on care reflecting safe and effective practice, maintaining quality as a high priority and enhancing people's lives, giving personal choice, person-centered care and enabling community integration wherever possible. So helping people who live in that accommodation to be part of their local community or beyond, assisting them to do activities they enjoy and that they need for their daily lives, building and maintaining friendships and relationships where they want to, and sort of making sure that those connections are still there with family and friends, that are facilitated as much or as little as people want, whilst providing a safe, manageable, comfortable home environment. I'm sure you're all aware the provision of such care is influenced by health and social care policy relevant to older people, carers and management of long-term health conditions, which includes long-term or progressive conditions such as mental health that affects older people, especially dementia, depression and anxiety. And to this end, we need to ensure that staff have an appropriate level of training and expertise. So people who use those services will have a diverse range of needs, including those with mild, moderate needs, people with complex needs, challenging behaviour, mobility, disabilities and sensory impairment, including acquired brain injury. And those needs will vary depending on an individual care dependency. So as part of the specification, we've summarised what the typical characteristics are attributable to an individual in relation to 4 categories. And those 4 categories are residential needs, residential dementia, nursing needs and nursing dementia. And that list isn't exhaustive, but it acts as a guide to both social care staff and yourselves, and it runs in parallel with the standards and outcomes framework that Hannah mentioned earlier in the webinar. Could we go to the next slide, Jill, please? So the key contractual terms, as you'll all know, North Yorkshire have undertaken an actual cost of care exercise for residential and nursing care. And there are 4 agreed rates for people aged 65 plus for residential care, residential dementia, nursing and nursing dementia. And that includes an amount for return on investment. The rates have been published in the APL provider bulletin, but just to note that the rates exclude the funded nursing care, which currently is £187.60 a week for the national rate. And also to note that the dementia rates will be paid for people with an assessed need of dementia and where the provider has the relevant registration with CQC. As Hannah mentioned earlier, the rates are agreed at the point of application, and they also reflect the direct care hours as determined by the actual cost of care exercise. A rationale is required if costs are outside these rates, and those specific direct care hours per resident per week are for each home category. They've also been published in the APL bulletin, so you can refer back to that. Only in the event of an individual requiring support over and above the prescribed direct care hours will an application for an enhanced rate be considered, and for 1-to-1 hours, an hourly rate will need to be agreed at the point of application. In circumstances where, due to market forces, a service provider is unable to provide a viable placement within that actual cost of care rate, they must apply through the sustainability process for an increase in rates, and that requires submitting documentation as set out within a policy for an application to be considered. Those applications specifically relate to an increase in rates, and they'll only be considered for providers with a CQC rating of good or above, and the average market available rate at the time of application will be used to determine a suitable alternative rate based on the average of 3 quotes of like-for-like care. The actual cost of care fees have been introduced on all new contracts, and they commence from the 4th of April 2022, and that reflects an inflationary increase of 5%. For those existing packages, the actual cost of care rate will be increased over a maximum of 3 years, and there's further information in the APL provider bulletin. It has an explanatory table demonstrating the amounts, so it shows you what will be provided at what point in time. And each year the actual cost of care will be increased by an inflation level that's been agreed. Where packages are above that cost of care rate, there'll be no inflation applied. However, we've got safeguards in place to ensure that those rates don't drop below the actual cost of care rate for that year. And for placements of people in care homes outside North Yorkshire, for people aged 65 plus, we'll honour an uplift agreed by the host authority where they've undertaken an actual cost of care exercise, and we'll consider individual business cases where there's no actual cost of care exercise in place. And just to note, our brokerage process will actually preference those providers who accept our cost of care rates in the first instance. That isn't to say that we won't look at other providers, but the first point of call will be those specific providers. For self-funders and those above capital limits, in the event that you take or accept a private fee per individual, then North Yorkshire County Council expects you to have undertaken sufficient financial checks to satisfy yourselves of the individual's ability to be able to pay for their care based on an average length of stay of 5 years. And in an instance where a resident falls below those capital limits, then an NYCC contract will be issued, and that'll be based on the actual cost of care rates. And the last thing on this slide is with regard to absences and notice periods. So as Hannah alluded to earlier, we actually have consistency across the board. So when someone is admitted to hospital, payments will continue for the first 2 weeks. They'll remain at 100%, and then they reduce on a sliding scale. So for the next 3 to 6 weeks, it's 80%, and then from week 7 up to a maximum of 3 months, it'll be 50%, and that's the case for other absences as well. And notice to end packages, we would expect to have 28 days notice for an individual package where that is ceasing, and for notice to end an overarching agreement such as a home closure, we'd expect 3 months notice unless we agree otherwise by mutual agreement. So for example, if there's staffing issues or you've got limited staff and you can't continue to provide that service, but that would be by mutual agreement. Okay, thank you. I think it's over to Julie for the next few slides.
I've just got a couple of questions I think we could take if we've got time. So there was a question, I think it was similar to the one we had earlier, Hannah, around residential services being further afield, say Sunderland or Durham, where only individual placements are spot purchased. Was the advice that that will continue, but you would need to apply to the approved provider list?
Yeah, so what we're saying is for all out of county placements need to be onboarded onto the APL, and we will so they're bound by those contract terms regardless if it's just one person. What we do in some scenarios is we make short notice or emergency or not necessarily foreseen placements out of county. So we might not have the provider on the list at the 1st of November, but on the 1st of January, probably a bad date to select, isn't it? But later down the line, somebody is identified as needing to move to a residential care home in Durham, for example, to be closer to family. They're not on the list. We will ask that provider to join the list, and internally we'll work as quickly as possible to make that happen. But we do still need those providers to be on the approved provider list to make a placement.
Thank you. And there's a question around a care home where you might at the moment be funding people above normal rates. If that isn't going to continue in the future, does it mean that residents might have to leave a care home?
Do you want to pick up, Carol, or do you want me to pick it up?
No, I'll let you pick up, Hannah.
So we had a similar question. We've had some similar questions yesterday and some similar questions out with these webinars about existing packages. So existing packages of care under current individual service contracts will remain under the terms of the current PPA. So the PPA will expire, but it's detailed within that individual service contracts may run for longer than the agreement itself. So the terms of that PPA will apply until such a point that there's a complete reassessment or review, and we need to issue a new individual service contract, which will be under the terms of this contract. So no, we're not expecting that anybody needs to move out because of this change in terms.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And just one final one before we move on. Where care homes for people under 65 who aren't included in the ACOC exercise, is there a costing model for that group of people?
There is, and we've got a 3.1% increase, I think, on the contractual rates, but I can possibly answer that out after the meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. I'll move on a slide. So it's over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Gillian. So today, I know that we're running low on time, so I will try, and it is quite a whistle-stop tour anyway, because just to let you know, I will be doing a little bit more through Care Connected and specific sessions around the quality pathway and PAMS. So I don't want anyone worrying that they've just seen it very quickly. What's important is that sign up to the APL. So you can see here what our vision is, and I'll give a brief overview. What we want is a clear end-to-end process that drives quality in our market, enabling early intervention, provide support at the right time, have a consistent approach that enables good quality care. And by doing that, we'll identify a risk early, and we are going to rate providers. And I know there was a question about that yesterday, but as a local authority, we do that anyway, just to make sure we're putting the support where it needs to be. And again, it supports that early intervention. We're going to have a more flexible, dynamic approach to quality assurance, which we've learned through the pandemic as well. So we will look at face-to-face as what we've done before, but also those self-assessments as well. We do want to align our standards to support CQC inspections and drive quality in the market, promoting best practice where we can. Can I have the next slide, please? And as I say, I touched on it a minute ago, just to mention the trusted assessments. From working in the quality team, one of the questions we always used to get is, actually, if you give us that information before the visit. So this is where we're introducing some self-assessments where you can see our standard. And as Hannah mentioned earlier, the outcomes framework, the system we're going to use pulls that back. So it's that golden thread. So the questions that are the outcomes framework that's embedded in the contract is what you're going to be completely measured on, and you'll see those questions and you'll have that capability to self-assess as well. Our driver, it's about market sustainability and reducing provider failure, and to work better together, which we've done through the pandemic as well. Can I have the next slide? So this is just at a glance. As I say, we will be looking at this a little bit later, but this is the provider journey. And we still need to firm everything up on this, but the blue route is your first year on the approved provider list, which, as you can see, there's certain interventions along the way. Your green route is moving forward for the length of the APL, and you can see the self-assessment there is a starting point as well. The purple route at the bottom is going to be our pathway to outstanding. So those providers that are good rated and want to take that next step, we're going to be running some courses on a pathway to outstanding. And on the left, you've got the amber, and that's all our levels of intervention. So we have 4 levels of intervention. So the journey basically just shows that all those opportunities where you can receive support from us as a local authority. Can I have the next slide, please? So our data and intelligence hub. Sorry, I knew I was going to cough at some point. I could feel it in my throat. Our data and intelligence hub model, obviously as a local authority, we're gathering soft intelligence, information, raw data on a daily basis. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we bring it into one central place, so we've got a clear view of risk within our market. And again, this is all about the early intervention and support in the market. So our CQC ratings, outcomes from visits, soft intelligence, complaints, compliments, feedback from our care and support team, our service development team, is all going to come into one place so we can analyse that and respond better. Can I have the next slide, please? And again, just another quick visual diagram about that kind of approach for those risk ratings. So if you're a green provider, you can see here, there's that approach of a self-assessment that I mentioned as well, up to 10% validation visits. And again, that continuous improvement through the pathway to outstanding, and levels of support that you can receive as advice and guidance. And hopefully we'll have some tools and resources that we can put on a website that's accessible as well. And on the flip side, we're a level 3 where it's a high risk provider, and there's improvement required in some intervention. And as I say, that could be a provider that's going through organisational safeguarding or changing manager. But again, it's about getting the support at the right time, and that can be through practical support for our quality improvement team and some on-site training as well. Next slide, please, Jill. Provider assessment, market management solutions. So you're going to hear this quite a bit. And for those organisations that's on the call that are nationwide, some of your services may already be using this, because it is something, there's a lot of different regions using it. We have signed up as a region, so it's 14 different local authorities within our region that are using this system. So if you've got services in Leeds and in North Yorkshire, everyone will be using this system. It's got 5 domains, as you can see there. Again, links completely back to your outcomes framework as well. And it's an easy system to use. As I say, we will talk about it more in the future, but that is going to be our quality assurance approach moving forward, and a technological solution to enable both us to be able to measure ourselves. Thank you, Jill.
And I think that's over to me, isn't it? So thank you, everyone, so far. I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes just to overview the support that North Yorkshire County Council are putting in place, and how Go for Growth plays into that space. So we have done a number of support sessions already. So we've had a webinar dedicated to the voluntary sector on the 11th of May, and the video and the slide deck for that are on the Go for Growth YouTube channel, and they have also been emailed out to registrants. If anybody went along to that and they haven't had that email, please do get in touch. My email's on this slide deck, and we'll get that sent out to you, but that should have already gone. We also did a process webinar on the 12th of May where we covered things like the new Your Tender system. So if you haven't done a live bid for any Yorkshire local authority since the turn of the year in 2021, you might not know that it's changed from Proactis, who used to host it, to Mercell. You should have had a communication from North Yorkshire County Council, but the system has moved over, so you are working in a slightly different environment. It is actually much more intuitive to use, so it is a bit simpler, but if you've not used it before, we've had a run through how to register to it, how to express interest and find an opportunity, how to download the documents, and then some high-level understanding of the application form itself. Now, the application form isn't finalised yet, but we are planning to dedicate one of our drop-in sessions, and I'll talk about the drop-in sessions in a second, but we are planning to dedicate a whole webinar for a step-by-step guide of the application form itself. And on the process webinar, we did give some handy hints around how to prepare to take part, some of the common pitfalls that providers can often find themselves seeing, and how to avoid those things. So you can see a video link on the screen to that, but again, it's also on the Go for Growth YouTube page, and there's a copy of the slide deck there as well. All of the support that Go for Growth gives for North Yorkshire for the approved provider list is all around process. So any of the technical questions, any questions relating to service specification, anything to do with pricing, your delivery model, would go through the normal clarification question process when the procurement is live. but both prior to and during the procurement, if you have any issues with processes or need to ask any basic questions on how to take part, then Go for Growth can take those questions directly from you. And we've got lots of assets, a video tutorial assets to help you do that whilst you're working through the application form. So you can see on the screen, there's some videos that you can go to around that registration, setting up alerts so that the opportunity will come to you, and expressing interest in it once you've found it. And our YouTube channel link is also on the slide deck as well. Just to say, we think the intended date as it stands at the moment is the 1st of June for the procurement to go live. North Yorkshire team are pulling out all of the stops to get there for the 1st of June. So my advice always is, don't rely on an alert service. Do go and look for the opportunity on or around the 1st of June. So somewhere around the 9th or the 16th of June drop-in session is when we'll be talking through the application form. But in addition to the support that we've already given, we in Go for Growth are offering one-to-one support sessions. They are pre-bookable. They're a team session. They're 30 minutes each session. You can book using the link on the screen. And please do feel free to use that. They're an in-confidence conversation, and you can ask us anything you like about process. You can ask us any question you like. If we can't answer it, we'll redirect you. So don't worry, we won't answer questions that we're not qualified to ask. And that really is around service delivery, pricing, etc. They will go to North Yorkshire. So do feel free to use those booking sessions if you want to. The weekly drop-in sessions are just via Zoom. You don't need to register for them. They're just a place for you as a provider or a potential provider, current or intended in the new APLs, if you have some questions on process that you're working through and you would like to talk to a real person about them in a smaller group, then you can come along to the drop-in session. We'll take any questions that you've got. We will have a loose agenda, always covering the processes. And again, like I say, either the 9th or the 16th we'll probably dedicate to going through the application form step by step itself. They're always for 45 minutes and they're always at 10 a.m. and the dates are on screen. We're doing 4 service-specific webinars. So as Hannah said, we had home-based support yesterday. Some of you might have joined us yesterday on that session, and the current session we're running today is on residential and nursing care. So we have 2 more coming up next week. On the 24th of May, we have a webinar at 2:30 on supported living. And then the final one on the 26th of May at 10:30 on community-based support. It will follow the same structure as today, going through the quality pathway, as well as some service-specific information and an overview of how Go for Growth might be able to help. So that's kind of all the support that's on offer as it stands at the minute. What I would say is, if there's something else that you need, don't be afraid to ask. Do give us a shout. If it's not process related, then we can always have a conversation with North Yorkshire and the commissioning and procurement teams about the support that might be needed. And we are ready for Q&A, and we do have a few questions in the Q&A. So I'll stop sharing the screen and let's see what we've got. So in the chat, we've got the slides will be available. Yes, they will. They'll be sent out to everyone that's registered, as well a copy of the recording as well. So that will all come out to everyone. Don't worry too much about taking any notes. And I think that might be all we've got. It doesn't look like we've got anything still open in the Q&A. We have been answering as we've gone along. I'll just give it a second to see if there are any final questions that anyone who's attending would like to ask, or anything that there is to add from any of our presenters today.
I was just thinking to add, Jill, that only because the document's open in front of me and I'm working on it as we speak, well, not as we speak, but this morning, is that we're developing the FAQs document. Yes. So we've had some FAQs come through already through the webinars that we've already held, the process webinar and the home-based support one yesterday. And we've also had a number of FAQs through from the independent care group on behalf of providers. So we're just working through those. It will be made available to providers hopefully by early next week, and then what we'll do is we'll review it regularly just to make sure it's up to date and we add any additional questions that are coming through. So hopefully that'll be available early next week as well.
Perfect. And yes, the ETA for when the procurement goes live for everybody, it's intended at this point for the 1st of June. I know North Yorkshire are working really hard to get everything ready to go live on the 1st of June. The notification will be in your tender. So that's the EU Supply Your Tender system. If you don't know how to find that, give me a shout and I can send you a link for EU Supply, but it will come through there. So if you've got an alert service, you might receive it from the alert, or you should receive it from the alert service. But again, my advice is go and have a look on or around the 1st of June for that opportunity. The alert services are good, but they're not perfect. And I would never advise a provider to rely on the alert services of any of the procurement portals, not just Your Tender. Go and have a look for it.
And just to add to that, Gillian, as well, that for those, I know there's quite a few people on the call who join Care Connected. If you don't join Care Connected and you're not even aware of it, please email social services and we can get you signed up. When it does go live, I'll make sure we've got appropriate links and I'll put a slide on Care Connected as well. But those slides are shared on a weekly basis, so happy to do that as well, just to support for people know when it's there. But like Gillian said, please pop on and have a look as well.
Yeah, and I think that we are hoping that the procurement will be live for 5 weeks. So once it goes live, if that is the 1st of June, it will be live then for 5 consecutive weeks. And again, you can see this in the process webinar, but our advice is there will be a timescale in that procurement documentation that says when you can ask clarification questions by and when your submission is due to be in by. So that 5 weeks might be subject to change. It could be shorter or longer, but always have a look when you get the documentation at what those timescales are. So you're happy that you know when you need to do what by.
We've also got the weekly bulletin going out. So there's probably a mix of current and new providers on the call. So the bulletin only goes out to current providers, of course, but that goes out weekly now on a Monday. And as soon as we've got that confirmed date, we'll publish that in there as well. There's the North Yorkshire Partnerships website as well that will be regularly updated as well. So lots of places to get updates.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of support available for the approved provider list. And if you have any questions at all, like I say, just give the contact details are on the slide that you can get in touch with any one of us. And so there is one question that is, we've not extended to North Yorkshire as yet, but as a provider, they're pretty prominent in the Leeds and York area. Would you recommend applying? I think as a provider myself to public sector, I would say you can certainly have a look at the documents. You can express your interest in the opportunity, download the documents, have a read through, ask any questions to help you make your decision. I don't know if the team have got anything else to add to that.
It's hard to know because I'm assuming it's a residential and nursing provider working on the borders of North Yorkshire, and yeah, we're a rural county, aren't we, with some of our localities really close to Leeds and York, walking distance in some cases. So yeah, it's hard to say without knowing the details and thinking about kind of local demand and capacity. Happy to have a conversation with that provider. We can direct them to the locality-based service development manager or officer to talk about kind of local demand if that's helpful. So happy to put our team inbox in the chat box if that person wants to have a conversation about kind of viability.
Perfect, thanks Hannah. And I think all the contact details are on the slide deck as well, so that's useful. And I think that's all we've got in terms of chat and Q&A. So I think that will be where we can wrap up for today. If you do think of something the minute we close the webinar down, those contact details will come out to everyone today. Hannah's just put the House Service Development email address in the chat. So thank you everyone for taking time out of what I know are really busy days. To all our presenters, thank you as well. That's super helpful, I think, for providers. And we'll maybe see some of you on the next ones.
Thanks, Gillian. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks ever so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.